This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, here we are, November the 7th, 2022. And I want my headphones on this time, folks. You gotta bear with me. I just got back from Toronto and Frightmare in the Falls, and my laptop conked out. So I gotta get a new laptop. I'm kind of on a temporary one here until the time comes, and hoping this all works out fine. I so far I can hear my guest, and he can hear me. I think really that's all that matters at the moment. But I'm wearing my Victim No More beanie here today because, well, we're doing a lot of No More stuff. Look, I got the hats.
I didn't even know we had hats.
Well, listen, Bobby Heckman is going to know as of right now, your beanie's in the wash. I couldn't wear it during the interview and promote the film, right? Right? Look, if Bobby Heckman's watching. Look at this, Bobby. Look what your co-producer is doing. Look what he's doing, but look what your star is doing.
Well, I'm actually wearing a Lucharitos t-shirt, and this t-shirt was a smaller version, was actually in the movie. It's the shirt that Joe Winchell's character wears.
Listen, Bobby Heckman does not want to hear that. His hair got whiter, just as you said that.
Oh, that's not possible.
Folks, I give you one of the cast members from Victim No More, for which I got involved with very, very early. I give you James Taffurelli.
Taffurelli, you got it.
I got her. I was going to screw that up again. Welcome to the show, James.
Oh, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got involved in Victim No More early because connected with Bobby Heckman online, given that well, I remember at the time I was trying to get Kimberly Beck on the show here, and he explained her busy schedule, and but he was very polite with me about it, and we just seemed to be connected ever since. And when this rolled around, I just got involved with it, and no regrets there. And he and I kind of have similar jobs. I think he works uh, I believe at a hospital in New York, and I work at a hospital here. I do housekeeping. I think he's of some kind of security, but I don't know the specifics of it, and it's too hazy right now. But nonetheless, I've been in connection with him for a long time now, and he's been on the show here a couple times. But before we get into Victim No More, I would like to get a little bit of your background. I want to know what led to you to get into the industry.
Oh, well, that's kind of a long story, you know. I mean, I did a little theater in high school.
Mhm.
Um, I was definitely in my high school years more into music. I was in a string of bad punk and ska bands, and one pretty good one actually. And got a taste for performing, and I needed a change of life for personal reasons. So I ended up going to college for theater, and I didn't really fit in the college theater kind of atmosphere too much. It's very clicky, very like the teachers had their like students that they liked and they kind of nurtured, and everybody else
I
was
know
like,
that environment so well.
yeah. So I only really lasted a little while there, but um, all throughout from when I was a kid, I was always into martial arts, and I had started making friends. I had changed styles. I had kind of got more focused on on like sword fighting and weapons fighting and things like that. And I had made some friends in that world who were like doing stunts, and they were like, well, if you could act, if you could actually act, you could probably do this as well, you know, because sometimes they look for a little more. And at the time, you know, I'd gone to some like cattle calls like for extra work, and at the time that was a lot more of an endeavor than it is now. Now you just kind of sign up for an app, you get emails, and you kind of go for it. Then you had to like, you know, I live about an hour train ride from Manhattan. You'd have to take a train into Manhattan, get there early, bring like a lawn chair or something, stand online for, you know, for hours and hours and hours.
My kitty. Look at this kitty. Look at this Skittles. Look, there's a kitty. There's an orange tabby kitty.
So, anyways, yeah, so it was a long process, but you know, I started getting extra work in movies, and once I got on set, you know, I found that I was my skill sets were kind of appreciated and stuff. So I think the first movie I worked on was actually a Joel Schumacher movie called Bad Company. It had starred Chris Rock and Anthony Hopkins. It faded into obscurity. It was one of those movies about terrorism that was kind of slated to come out right when 9/11 was happening, so they pushed it off for a few years. So even though I shot in 2001, I don't think it came out till like 2003 or 2004 or something like that. But you know, like I got there just to do extra work, and they were like, I guess, looked at me and liked the cut of my jib. And next thing you know, I'm dressed in a SWAT team uniform and I'm kind of running around, and you know, I kind of liked it. And so I kept working with it over the years. And when I didn't have movies to do, I'd work in theater and do plays and stuff. And eventually, about maybe 4 or 5 years later, I came to work at a place here on Long Island where I live called the Cinema Arts Center. It's in Huntington, and it's sort of like, the best way to explain it is it was kind of founded by a bunch of hippies, and they wanted to do kind of, you know, counterculture films and stuff like that. And there was a, you know, it's there's plenty of cineplexes and, you know, big movie theaters out here. And this place, they focused on indie movies and foreign flicks and stuff like that. And it had its own little kind of world around it. And I became friends with a couple of guys who I had known just through reputation growing up. Like when I was in high school and stuff, they were doing like a public access show, like a public access sketch comedy show. And now they'd sort of moved on to making their own little movies and TV shows and stuff. And those guys, this is, you know, getting close to 20 years now. And those guys are probably my closest friends now. And, you know, whatever I'm doing, you know, I'll always kind of, you know, make time to work with them, you know. So I was working on, we did a TV thing. Like it started out as a pilot. And then when we couldn't get anyone to buy the pilot, we made a mini series, and it was called The Gooligans. And it was sort of like the best way to explain it was like we were trying to, like, I guess, market it towards like the Adult Swim crowd, like a kids show that wasn't really for kids. You know, it was like structured like a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of thing, but it was violent and gory and had dick and fart jokes. And it was kind of like a monsters kind of thing, where it was a bunch of monsters trying to like kind of fit in. And you know, we just kept adding, like, it was like a Frankenstein, a zombie, a werewolf, and a vampire, and we just kept adding more and more. We added like a creature from the Black Lagoon character, and you know, like a mummy. But then it just got more and more obscure. Like we had luchadors in there and robots and fucking my character. Oh, can I swear in this?
Go
Or
ahead. Go
okay,
ahead.
my character was sort of like, oh man, he was like an undead version of Alfred Molina's character from Boogie Nights. You know, I mean, it was,
Oh, I love Boogie Nights.
yeah. So I was kind of like a sleazy lounge singer. Um, so we worked on that one for a few years, and you know, the movies would come and go, and then for a while, I kind of, you know, had a string of really, you know, big projects to work on, and I kind of snapped off from them. I worked on the Darren Aronofsky film Noah as a stunt fighter, and I was on that for a few months, and got to actually do some like stand-in work for the star Russell Crowe, and I got to jump on another movie with him right afterwards called Winter's Tale. They're two movies nobody saw. They're not really, you know, but
Well, I saw them. I didn't care for Winter's Tale. Wasn't a fan of Noah either, but I am going to say this. You're in a movie with Jennifer Connelly. Did you get to meet her?
I was in the same vicinity as her, but I didn't get to meet her.
Yeah,
Um,
how beautiful is she in person?
Everybody was kind of caked with dirt and shit in that one, but yeah, still stunning, yeah. And Emma Watson was on that too, and
Oh, that's right.
she was. It was weird because whenever she was on set, um, the paparazzi was just all over her, so it was like they'd find photographers in the woods and shit. They were following. We shot that actually shot on Long Island. That shot about 20 minutes from where I grew up. So at the time, I was kind of like commuting to work like a normal person every day. I would go stay at my mom's house and drive out to the set, and it was nice. I didn't really get to meet a lot of the people on that. I mean, it was a great stunt team, but we were really just shooting a battle scene. I got to meet Ray Winstone quite a bit because he was like my
Mhm.
boss, I guess. He was like the leader of the Bad Army in that. He was awesome, really cool guy. I got to chat with Russell Crowe a little bit, but um,
Did he
not the
hit
most
you with a
approachable.
phone?
What?
Did he hit you with a phone?
No, no. I mean, I was in the same area as him, and I mean, I didn't have anything to talk to him about. Eventually, I found out he owned a rugby team, so that was like my in. I talked to him about the rugby team, you know. Then he was like chatting with me, but yeah, he's like a normal guy, I mean, there's no Hollywood in him. I think I kind of respected that more than other things. I mean, Ray Winstone was great though. He was hysterical. Just just one of the meanest, scariest people you ever meet, but just nothing but jokes. I really liked him a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and while I was doing that, I was also shooting a season of the HBO show Boardwalk Empire, and that was a lot of fun too. Um, so I was kind of whenever I didn't have something to do on that show, or I would try to. I hate to say it, I would try to let Boardwalk Empire take precedent over Noah because the costume was a lot more comfortable. It's just like a suit. Whereas in Noah, I wore about 40 pounds of leather and metal armor, and then they would dump rain on us, and it was more like 80 pounds. So, the fact that I could just go to the bathroom in my costume without any kind of big production, I kind of lean towards like, oh, I got Boardwalk this week. I can't work on Noah, but it was kind of cool. And that was a really cool set to work on. I got to meet Michael K. Williams, and he was really awesome. It was a real shame when he passed away. I really liked him. And again, someone you would think wouldn't be that approachable, but like a really nice guy in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I saw Winter's Tale and I saw Noah. The, the I read my Bible and I'm like, this is not Noah.
Yeah,
Boy,
I mean,
did they take liberties with that.
I'll be honest. I thought the scene we were shooting was like the climactic ending scene,
Hmm.
and that was like halfway through the fucking movie. I mean, I ended up it really like I liked it up until my parts were over, and then like they kind of lost me afterwards. Winter's Tale I never watched. I watched the parts I knew I was in because I wanted to see myself, but that's it. That's where it began and it ended. That movie lost me completely. I mean, and I hate to say it, I've been kind of lucky, but the big movies I've worked on, they've all been kind of crappy. Don't get me wrong, the checks don't bounce, but I don't think I mean, the stuff I worked on as far as like the big budget films, I'm trying to think of something I worked on that I was like, oh yeah, man, that was awesome. I was in
Yeah,
this
but you got to see Jennifer Connelly. I probably would have had goosebumps all over me seeing Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a very controlled situation. I didn't get to talk to her or anything like that. And even then, I was like, again, I was head to toe in armor with a helmet on, holding a spear, covered in muck and rain and all kinds of shit. And I've been wearing that costume. Um, that was to do that. You had to wear Under Armour, then a rain suit, then they'd put on the leather, then they would attach the plates, then they would like put makeup and cuts and bruises and mud and shit all over you, and then put the helmet on. So it was like, and they did that. Like I did that every day for months. So like by the time I had met her, we were a little bit along, and that costume stunk. I mean, I don't know if you ever got a bad smell into leather; it doesn't come out. So it was like I was kind of glad that I was not going to be face to face with like one of my boyhood crushes. I mean, I didn't need her getting a nostril full of that. That's for shit sure.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Victim No More. How did you meet Bobby Heckman and get cast in this film? Because, of course, you played Jason, Jason
Um,
Voorhees.
that's a bit of a story too. Where I was mentioning the Gouligans thing earlier. And one of my close friends that I had met kind of through the Cinema Art Center and working on various indie projects is a guy named Sean King. Now, Sean's the director of photography for
Mhm.
Victim No More. Um, and I've worked with him more times than I could count on different projects, and I mean, even like, he does a lot of like, he's always working on something, and he's always been happy to kind of pull me on for a gig when I didn't have work. So I've done like PA work, or held a boom mic for him, or a bounce board, or even like got to do some camera work through him. So he was good friends with Bobby, and probably about a year or so before Bobby announced that he was doing this. At the time, I was in between steady jobs, and I think I was building sets at a local theater, and Bobby lived right up the block from it. And I had texted Sean and been like, "Hey, you want to do something tonight?" He's like, "Well, I'm hanging out with my friend Bobby. He's in East Islip. Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in East Islip too." And he's like, "Yeah, come by. We're watching movies." So I went over to his house, and we sat around and watched Alpha episodes, and I think a couple of scenes from The Fly too. And I'm like, "All right, I like the cut of this guy's jib. He's into a lot of the same stuff," and we just became friends. And later, Sean would have parties, and he'd be there and stuff like that. So I never got close with him, but I was always friendly with him, and we'd known each other through social media. And he started announcing the crowdfunding for Victim No More. And I initially approached him because me and my wife have a design company. We build, set pieces, costumes, props. My wife does special effects makeup or regular makeup. She does wig design, and I was just like, listen, I mean, if you want, we could do the costumes and the props for this, because I've had some experience, like with stunt weapons and things like that, so I know that he would need machetes, and, I can take a machete and really Jason the shit out of it, but I could also make the safety ones that you use in the fight scenes. And, we knew that somebody was getting impaled, so I could make like the rig that made the girl look like she had gone stabbed with the machete and all that stuff. So I'd approached him about that, and he had turned to Sean, and Sean was like, "Yeah, definitely." I mean, he gave the seal of approval for us. And when I had met Bobby initially, I was like, at the time, I think I was maybe a year off of I was playing Lurch in the Addams Family musical, so I was getting really into creature and character work, and I had done that for the Gooligans as well. And I actually even kind of through conventions made friends with a guy who was kind of like a pretty famous creature actor. So I would always kind of go to him for advice on that stuff. So I'm like, listen, I know it's a tough sell because I'm 5'11". I'm not even 6 feet tall, but I have a lot of experience with the stuff, both with stunts and with creature work. And if you don't have a Jason yet, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for it. I just kind of threw it out there. And he's like, well, let me think about it. And I guess, again, I got another glowing review from Sean, and Bobby came back and he's like, yeah, I'd love for you to play Jason, so let's get started on this thing. So at first me and my wife were just helping with pre-production, and then Bobby got to know her, and she ended up in the movie as well. She's the one who, the girl with the bow and arrow. She's the one on your T-shirt right now. Um, one of the ninja girls, at the end, so to speak. So that's funny too, because she took about 3 or 4 months of archery lessons. Are we doing spoilers on this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, she took about 3 or 4 months of archery lessons to pretend to shoot me in the forehead. And I'm like, you don't get to do it for real. Like, it's got to be like you're gonna loose an arrow and it's gonna cut away and it's gonna cut back and I'll be sticking out of my head. She says she wanted to know what she was doing, and I think that one day I'm gonna piss her off and she's gonna call me in the backyard and just tell me to start running. I feel like that's gonna happen. But anyway, so yeah, we started working on it, and we had a year, and then the pandemic hit about a month later, and then we had 2 years. So we were really able to kind of pre-production the shit out of it. And my wife became very invaluable, and so she ended up taking a producer credit for it as well, which was kind of cool. And then I think eventually I got a producer credit too, and I'm trying to figure out what I did to earn that, besides just sweat my ass off in a rubber suit in August. Yeah, and we were initially supposed to shoot it in early May, and that turned into late August, which was kind of awesome because we went from like, oh, it'll probably be like high 60s, low 70s to like every day I got in that fucking suit, it was 90 to 100 degrees. It was one of the hottest freaking summers we ever. So like, and that it's a brilliant suit, and the guy who made it is a special effects artist named Ricky Vitus, and he was like a face-off contestant, and I mean, he's worked with a lot of big names in the industry, and things like that. Really, really brilliant guy. but like it's a silicone suit with a costume over it. It's like, I'd put this on and be naked Jason before we put like the raggy costume on. I mean, it's fully done. I mean, at first there wasn't even a pee pee hole in it. I had to lobby for the pee pee hole because I'm like, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom at some point in this thing. But pretty much yeah, besides sweating my ass off in a suit, I mean, besides, I don't really know what I did to deserve a producer credit, but I guess, yeah, I worked with my wife and she was really the brains behind it. I just did the heavy lifting. Yeah, but yeah, once the pre-production was done, yeah, and we started rolling, um, it was a pretty intense production for what it was. I think we only shot 13 days, but those were 13 full ass days. Uh,
I got to get your wife on here. Once I get my laptop situation situated here. But I
well,
remember that the archery scene. So yeah,
I
some
guarantee she will stroll in this house before this interview is over because she's coming home from work any minute.
yeah.
But if I was to say, honey, come sit down, she'd probably get that bow and arrow and shoot me in the head right here. You just want to do her makeup and make sure she's situated. So maybe another time. But I don't know if she wants to come over and say hi, she might. But I can't make any promises now.
No, no, I mean some point maybe later this month or maybe
Oh,
in
okay, yeah, yeah.
December, something like that. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure she would love to do it. And I mean, she had a lot of kind of cool perspective and stuff like that. But we had a lot of people that were great too. We had PAs that went above and beyond, and like, Catherine Mary Stewart was our second unit
I've
director,
had her on the show a couple times.
and she was like, days that she wasn't supposed to be there, she'd show up, and just, I mean,
Did she sing any songs from the Apple? I told Bobby to get her to sing some songs from the
no,
Apple.
she didn't sing anything from the Apple, but I didn't even know about the existence of the Apple, and that's kind of like, that's weird for me because I'm a big Canon Films fan and stuff like that. But like, you know, again, my wife does a lot of theater, and like, I really want to show this movie to them because they're all like Xanadu fans, and this movie the Apple makes Xanadu look like First Blood. It really does. I mean, I wasn't prepared for what I was watching. I think I saw it on Tubi. I'm like, oh, let's check it out. This way, if I see Kathy again, I can say I saw it because I was embarrassed to say it, like I didn't know about it. Oh my lord.
I got
And
it
she was
here on Blu-ray. It's one of those like ones like The Room. I just had to own.
and she was a baby in that too. She couldn't have been more than 17. She was
Something like that. She still looks great.
oh yeah, no, but yeah, but even then, she went above and beyond. She was there days she didn't have to be there. Like we had to pretty much be like, she bought the crew lunch one time, things like that. It was she was awesome. I really liked her. She had a lot of great stories, a lot of great insights. It was awesome to work with. Her part, she acted the shit out of it.
But
You
she
know,
didn't sing any songs about speed.
no, 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 nobody was singing. That's for sure. Um, and again, these were kind of grueling days. It was devastatingly hot. We were in the woods. We were getting covered in ticks and bugs and shit like that. At one point, the makeup tent where like they had put me into my costume, I guess we were on like a nest of like tick larvae. So like not ticks themselves, but like they were just hatched and were like little worms. And
Thanks,
they'd
Bobby.
yeah. The only thing that saved me was the silicone suit because they couldn't get past my ankles, but they got all over my feet, and it was they're not old enough to spread any diseases, but they bite you, and it itches a little bit, but then like a week later it blows up. And one of the PAs, every time for every one tick bite that somebody got, he'd get three. The kid was like a magnet for him. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff we ran into a lot. I mean, and for me it was rough because the first day I was in the Jason costume, I had these grand visions of being all method about it. Like, I'm going to stay in the costume, I'm going to stay focused, and it was that first day was, I think, our second day of shooting. It was the first day I was in the costume, and it was before I had my mask, so I had a silicone cowl on my head that covered my whole head, and just my face stuck out, and the sun was just beating down on the top of my head, and like it was the scene where I break Sean Jordan's neck, and they were trying to get the angles right, and it's complicated. And at one point, one of the PAs was like, I just felt a hand on my back, and he's like, dude, you're gonna pass out. And I'm like, I'm not gonna pass out. And he's like, your face is beat red. Just take the cowl off and sit down for a second. And I'm like, I'm fine, I'm fine. And like I bent over to pick something up, like the machete like fell over, and I bent over to pick it up, and like where the cowl kind of met my neck made a little spout, and like it was like a carton of milk was pouring on the ground, the amount of sweat that came out of it. And I'm like, all right, I need a break, even though we had to sit down. And so after that, it was like anytime that I wasn't shooting, I was in the shade with whatever could come off, my back open, just trying. Like that whole thing was like, the whole process was like, yeah, I had to act and I had to fight and stuff like that. But the hardest part about that was just keeping cool, and just, I mean, when you're in the costume, you can't really move. Um, well, you can move, but the thing is that the silicone is like a full body tension band. Like it's like lifting your arms is hard, walking is harder, keeping your back and your body straight. Like the whole thing just wants to kind of crumple you into a ball. So it doesn't feel like much when you first put it on, but as the hours go on, it wears you down. So fighting the fatigue and the heat and stuff like that. So when it was time to do my thing, I could, actually perform and not, and more importantly than that, do it safely. And that was really the biggest challenge in all of it. I thought it was just going to be like, like the big thing that we were doing is like, we didn't want Jason to look like he was breathing, as much as I love Kane Hodder, those big Kane Hodder breaths, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense for a dead guy to be breathing like that, so
My favorite Jason was Ted White, and we just lost him.
yeah.
I had him on here a couple of times, but he from the final chapter, he was my favorite Jason out of the bunch.
Yeah, I was when he died. I was actually chatting with Kimberly Beck about it because I never met him, and I had just met her at the premiere. And
I'm
we were
trying
talking
to
about.
get her on here. I would love to get her on here.
She is one of the most fascinating human beings I've ever met in my life. The stories that she drops, like she's talking about, she went to the store to like go get like a milk cart, like carton of milk or something like that. The story she'll tell you, it's like, because like she's pretty much Hollywood like royalty. I mean, she's in it. I mean, definitely get her on if you can. I mean, and just let her go. But besides being just a wonderful human being, just a wonderful, delightful, sweet, kind, you know, person. I mean, because I was like starstruck when I met her, and 5 minutes later, she's like sharing like a monster with me. She's like, I can't drink this whole thing. I'll get too hyper. Have some of this. Um, and yeah, really just very delightful person. I was very, very lucky when I met her at Creature Feature Weekend when we had premiered Victim No More, and I got to meet her, and I got to meet PJ Souls, and I've always loved PJ Souls. Like I like love Stripes, loved Rock and Roll High School. Like my dad, my parents were divorced, and I used to spend weekends and summers with my dad in Brooklyn, about a town over from where the Ramones were from.
I
Ramones are
just
from
met one
Rockaway
of the
Beach.
Ramones.
Yeah, and when I was a kid,
I met Marky Ramone at Frightmare in the Falls, and I got a
well,
signed drumstick.
I was in the same room as Joey Ramone. I'm not going to say I met him, but I got to see him in person before he passed. So that was kind of cool. My cousin, used to bring me around CBGBs and stuff, and then when I got older, I brought myself around CBs when it was still there. And I was very much a New York City punk kid. So I mean, that was really like when I was a kid, one of my first tastes of Ramon. My cousin's like, yeah, check out this movie. You'll like this band. So I always loved PJ Souls, and I got to chat with her and, talked about music and stuff. And I ended up walking away with her from her table with a whole bunch of autographs and stuff. She's like, you like this one? She kept signing pictures for me. She's a really awesome, sweet person. I got to meet Edwin Neal there too, the hitchhiker from Texas Chainsaw. Yeah. And he was my table neighbor. He was right next to me. So we hung out the whole weekend, what I mean? That guy was great. I mean,
I've had a number of Texas Chainsaw people on here, and I've had a number of Rock and Roll High School people on here. Hadn't had PJ on here, but I met Marky. I'm hoping to get him on here. I have had Day Young, and I've had Elias or Alex Elias, who was Coach Steroid. I had Dick Miller on here 5 months before he passed away.
oh wow.
Yeah, and I've had Alan Arkish, the director, on here 3 times. So I've had a lot of Rock and Roll High School on here. I want to get PJ Souls on here at some point, and I'd like to get Kimberly back. Because I mean, she was in Marnie, a Hitchcock movie, and I've had Hitchcock's granddaughter on here.
She was
Um,
also did an episode of the Munsters too. She was on the
yeah,
Munsters.
and I met Amy Steele at Frightmare in the Falls. Somehow I get the feeling that she won't do my show, but I can't win them all. But I did meet her and did some texting with Bobby Heckman during that time. Um, let me see. Catherine Mary Stewart I've had on here a couple times as well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but nonetheless, you mentioned larvae and stuff like that, and a funny thought came into my head because I'd had Dina Naja on here,
Uh
and yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
oh, we're gonna talk about
She's
yeah.
apparently afraid of butterflies, and I guess you threw a worm at her. Is that like Jason's new weapon? Forget machetes. Jason throws worms now.
Dina and this fucking worm. You know, she'll never stop about the day. I was sitting there. Here's the thing: when you're in this costume, you can't move. You know, when the mask's on, you can't hear, you can't see, and the other thing too. All right, listen. This is probably the most unpleasant part about playing Jason was that my wife bought me this Under Armour. It's supposed to be heat wicking. It's supposed to cool you off. It doesn't work. It's bullshit. It doesn't work. But so I'm in this Under Armour, and then they cover me in baby powder so I could get into the costume, into the silicone. And then once you start sweating, all this baby powder, kind of like the costume makes its own gravy. And there's little pinholes and it drips and it doesn't listen, I'm gonna be straight up. It doesn't look like the most savory of fluids. It's a white milky fluid. You know, we'll let people's imaginations draw their own
It's like
conclusions.
Jason was going into other avenues.
It, 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 uh, it's like I was pretty much sweating semen, out of this thing. So it's like if I'm sitting in the costume, I sat by myself in a way, and I was chatting with her, and I'm holding the machete in my hand, and there's a little worm on the ground, and I kind of got the machete under it and just flicked it at her. I didn't realize how fucking scared of worms she was, but now it's like every time I see her, and she's become my friend now. We got to talk about the worm, you know. I mean, forget the fact that I turned her into a thumbtack in this movie. We're going to talk about the worm. The worm's a problem. So I love her to pieces, but I think
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's time to
and
let the
I
worm
had
go.
no idea. Like when I interviewed her,
No, she probably
Bobby
got
Heck
really.
Bobby Heckman had texted me about that. He said, "Ask her about her fear of butterflies or something like that." And I was like, I looked at her on the Zoom and I said something to the effect of, "Bobby says you're afraid of butterflies or something like." That became a big focus. Forget victim no more. I want to hear about this.
But holy shit, was she a good actress? Though she was really good in
Yeah.
this movie. I mean, and it's like when you get a slasher thing, you know, um, sometimes the acting doesn't have to be great. That's not what you're there for. It's good when it is, but generally, when somebody's about to die, you're ready for them to die. You're excited. You're like, all right, let's get rid of this asshole. I felt legitimately guilty killing her in this. You know, not Winchell. I've known that guy for years. Me and him go back about a good 15 years. I had a fun pushing that rib through his eyeball. That was a blast. I mean, I've got a story about that too because I mean, that whole Fulci thing, that was not my idea. I had no fucking depth perception. I'm like, all right, Joe, you got to sell this because I don't know where to stop. You got to stop when you're comfortable. And he touched that thing to his fucking eyeball. Like I watched the skin of his eye push in like a drum. And I'm like, before he stopped, and I'm like, I have a thing with eyes. So like, Deanna like doesn't like worms. I don't like when shit touches my eyes. I don't like when shit touches other people's eyes.
It is
And
kind of hard because there's some of those Fulci movies I enjoy, and then it gets to stuff like that. It's like, what the hell, you know?
well, Sean's a big fan of that stuff. The cinematographer, so he's right in there, like loving it, like yeah. Like I see the smile on his face, and I'm like, dude, if you do that again, I'm gonna fill this fucking mask up with puke. I'll be honest. It's not. But so that was where somebody got me on that one. But like, yeah, no, I mean, when it came time for her to die, I felt bad, and now it's like, it's a good possibility we're gonna do some more of these and we can't have her back. She's
You could
gone.
kill her with worms and butterflies.
That's true. And I just thought of something like in part five, and the fucking worms are coming out of the mask's eyes. I don't even think she saw that. I don't think she saw that. I bet you if I sent that picture, like,
I think you
don't
should.
give me a couple days. Don't air this for like 2 days. Let me get her with that first. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, we really lucked out with a lot of the cast. There was a lot of great people involved in this thing. Um, I mean, but yeah, no, I really was. It was a pleasant surprise getting to know her and to meet her and stuff, and she's become a very dear friend. But still, we can't let go of the worms. We're gonna be talking about the worms forever. So, but yeah, that was kind of awesome. I mean, as far as like the kills go and stuff, I mean that her kill was probably my favorite. I mean, the
Mine.
ribeye is the most you know memorable one, but like she just sold it. It worked. That kind of machete through the torso. That was my gag. I figured it out. Um, Ricky had actually made a torso that I could actually stab through to, and that was kind of fun. You know, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that was probably my favorite kill in the thing. Because the one with Sean Jordan, the neck break, I was so miserable with the heat and the fucking rubber thing on my head, and the Winchell one. I mean, the rib in the eye. I mean, and when you got towards the end, when the girls were starting to kind of take it out on me, at that point, like, because Kathy blows my arm off, my right arm was strapped against my body to make the like stump cell, and it was there for a good 8 or 9 hours. And like when you can't pick up your arm and just shift it and stretch it and stuff like that, Jesus Christ, it starts to burn. I mean, that was probably one of the most uncomfortable like situations I think I've ever been on a film set, was just not being able to move my arm for hours and hours and hours. Think about like if you sleep wrong on your legs and you want to shift your weight, you can't. You just kind of have to deal with it. Um, and Hans, the guy who played Robbie, he's an old friend, and he was like breaking my balls the whole time. So when it came time for me to toss him around a little bit, I let that kid have it. I'm like, you little bastard. I gave him a nice throw. So
You got a scene in the movie where Jason makes a choice. He can either have the hockey mask or the burlap sack from part two. I think in the next one, Jason should have a choice: machete or worm.
all right, that's my wife coming home. My dog's running around, so
Oh,
she,
wow.
she gets really excited when my wife comes home. So there's going to be a little whining, but it's okay. Calm down.
Have
Come
her
here.
pop in and say hello.
Yeah, come here. Come here, girl. It's okay. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, like, I've lobbied for the return of the weed whacker with the buzzsaw blade on it from part seven, but unfortunately, I don't think we had it in the budget for that one. So, but oh, jeez. But yeah, I mean, I know we're gonna. I don't know how much like we're supposed to disclose about it, but I know the if we end up doing another one, it's going to focus more on the final girls, and it's going to be more of an anthology. So, you
I
know,
was going to focus on worm. I want to see Jason use worms for weapons. And I think Dina, they should have her resurrected, covered in worms.
hey, that work, or it could be somebody kind of going through the woods and they find her rotting there, lots of worms involved. All right, I'm going to bring this up to her. I'm going to send her a
I
message
guarantee
after.
you she's going to hate us for talking about this. But Bobby's going to be like, yeah, that's a great idea. I think it's funny too. Bobby lives right across the hall from her.
Oh yeah. Like there was like an open apartment, and he, I guess, referred her or something like that. They're neighbors now.
I told him, I said, you ever like put these little bugs, like little plastic bugs on her door or something like that?
Oh,
Oh boy, oh boy.
yeah. It was a lot of fun to shoot. You know what I mean? There were definitely some moments, like in terms of just heat exhaustion and bugs and things like that. But yeah, for the most part, it was a cool experience. And again, we packed so much into like those 13 days of shooting. I'm surprised with how much movie we got out of it. I mean, I think they had to do some like pickup shots and stuff, but at that point, I was long gone.
That nice kitty sitting beside.
Oh yeah, no, he's he loves the attention. He wants to.
I bet he does.
Yeah.
I'm a cat lover too. Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
dog's very sweet too, but she's got to chill out a little bit now. My wife.
yeah. Well, what was your history with the franchise before? Like, have you seen them all prior to doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I was a lifelong fan. I mean, there were ones that I've seen more than others.
What's your
Um,
favorite?
oh, geez, that's a tough question. Um, I think pound for pound, my all-time favorite is probably Part Four.
Oh, I love that one.
Just because it's got Kimberly Beck in it, and it's got Crispin Glover and Tom Savini's back. But I'll be honest, like I have like my actual favorite, like my favorite Jason is C.J. Graham, so I love Part Six.
I love
Uh,
part six as well. I think part six might be the best one, but my favorite Jason is Ted White by far because he wasn't screwing around. He
yeah.
came off like this is a psycho killer on the loose. And my favorite shot in the entire franchise is Kimberly Beck running and going out through that window.
Oh yeah.
It's like survival. It's either go through Jason or take your chances through the window. And she went
Well,
through the window.
I think it can't be downplayed. How fucking badass Trish Jarvis is because she held him off
Yeah, here's
for
the thing.
enough time.
Everybody, it's funny. I don't mean to interrupt, but so many people give Corey Feldman credit on this. And I find it funny they talk about Jenny Field or Chris Higgins being great final girls. And here's the problem. You never hear Trish Jarvis brought up. Jarvis was put in a position she had to protect herself and she had to protect her brother. Now, her brother turned out to be incredibly resourceful, but I love it. I listened to a podcast not too long ago, and the guy was just downplaying Trish Jarvis, and I'm like, okay, if you're going to downplay Trish Jarvis, why are you praising Jenny because she had child psychology? She was still Paul Holt had to save her ass, and Chris Higgins was all but dead until the biker came in. You think Chris Higgins was going to survive that had it not been for the biker? No.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't think I could downplay any of the final girls because I love them all for their own reasons. But you have to take into consideration that Trish fought Jason for long enough to. I mean, like Tommy was upstairs shaving his head and putting makeup on and getting all prepared, and she was just downstairs holding him off with a fucking machete for what could have been up to like 20 minutes. I mean, I don't know. Enough time for him to
like I
bick his
said,
head and put makeup on.
I would love to get Kimberly back on here. Um, Bobby gave me the contact info to do that, but whether she responds, that's another thing. But if she does, she does. If she doesn't, she doesn't. I got to take it as it is. But I got to say, I think my favorite final girl of the Friday the 13th franchise is Trish Jarvis. And people like I said, I got annoyed that this podcast was downplaying her. And
Oh yeah.
I had this conversation with somebody recently. I don't consider Sydney Prescott of Scream a good final girl because she had help in every fucking movie.
Oh yeah.
But I brought up something that nobody else seems to be bringing up. I said, I think Mia Goth and X is one of the greatest final girls I ever seen because not only does she survive, but she did so by breaking every fucking rule that Jamie Kennedy discussed in Scream.
Yeah.
She starts out snorting cocaine. She gets naked. She has sex, and she smokes marijuana and all that stuff. She survives. I kind of lost interest in Scream after seeing X because I'm like, you know what? I see Mia Goth as pretty much a friggin' badass.
I
But
have a problem with Scream because I like the movie, but Scream kind of gave birth to what I think is like the worst era of horror. You
yeah,
know, that
it-
era where like every horror movie, like the poster had to have all of these WB faces on it,
yep,
you know. So it's like I hate to call them the Dick Tease horror, but like that PG-13 wave
yep,
that kind of rushed in the late 90s into the 2000s. And like we literally had to have torture porn kind of wipe that free, you know. I mean, we had to go to such a heavy extreme in the other direction. So I mean, Scream's a great movie. I like it,
yeah.
but I don't like the Hollywood trend that it gave birth to. And I tend to like not really love the sequels either, you know. I mean, I loved Tina from Part 7. I have a soft spot for that movie because it was the first Friday
I
the 13th
love
movie.
Lar Park Lincoln.
But I just love the
And,
fact that like it was like a telekinetic who could actually throw down with Jason.
but
You know,
here's
so
the thing: how much better would that movie have been had they got rid of Nick?
yeah,
I
yeah.
here you what I told you what my favorite scene of the franchise is. Kimberly Beck going out through that window. You want me to tell you what the scene I hate the most of the franchise is?
What's that?
Okay, you got the house are blown up. You got Tina and Nick hugging each other on the dock, and then Jason ends up appearing, breaking them up. Nick gets up there and starts firing rounds at Jason. What does Jason do? He bats the gun out of his hand and pushes him into that fucking canoe. Gee, Oz from part 6 could have been so lucky. He could have been pushed into the coffin as opposed to having his heart punched out through the other side of his body.
Yeah, yeah. No, he got it. He got off easy. They needed
I
to.
hated, and I got nothing against the actor, but I hated the Nick character because there was 2 or 3 times Tina saves his ass. And it's like, why couldn't we just have Tina versus Jason? Why do we have to have this asshole hanging around? Why? Because they need a love interest? You know, I didn't care for it. And every time I watch part 7, number one, they don't need Nick there. Oh, he's appearing there because he gets along with his cousin. No, he's appearing there because they need a fucking potential fuck buddy for Tina. You know, I I love Lar Park Lincoln, but I have, and this was the first one I saw in theaters, but I have a massive issue with a lot of stuff that went on in part 7 of it. And my biggest issue is Nick.
Mm.
Get rid of him. You don't need him there. If Alice can go one on one against Mrs. Voorhees and be limited in resources, then surely you can have Tina go one on one with Jason with telekinesis without this idiot that she has to save a dozen times because, oh, we need something for the girls in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
I have,
we actually had a connection to Tina Shepard in Victim No More. There's a character who introduces herself as Amanda Shepard, who's the jogger who turns out to be the paramedic who kind of drags Robbie away.
mhm.
And I remember at one point, I never read it in the script, and I don't know if it was just an idea that got scrapped. I don't know if we scrapped it for time. I don't know if we scrapped it for practicality. But when she goes to pull Robbie away, she was supposed to kind of blast Jason back with telekinesis. Like he was supposed to go in, like to grab, and he was supposed to get blown back. Um, Now I can understand if it was a practicality thing because that's like it's not scanners. That's a hard fucking thing to sell, you know, to get people to kind of understand it, you know. But it was also at that point we had something like it was me, you know, a half a dozen PAs, Sean, like we had everyone involved in that day. And, you know, I mean, it was a very, very tightly scheduled day. So anything extra, you know, I mean, even if it's just a split-second motion where the camera has to change the angles twice, that would have added like an hour and a half, 2 hours to a day that we didn't have time in. So I think it got scrapped for time, but I never really asked Bobby about that, why they got rid of that. Because I kind of like the nod to the character,
Yeah.
and it kind of I think made things make sense a little bit because you know at the end when I'm getting surrounded, I get that like they wanted everyone to have their kind of moment to shine, but I
Mm.
feel like at some point Jason would have started killing people. You know, it was a long time of him just kind of standing there taking in all those women. Now again, like everyone was awesome, everyone had a cool character, everybody kind of brought it. So I get that like everyone should have been featured, but it was at one point I feel like he would have started moving towards somebody to break someone's neck. But so that would have been a cool explanation as to why he couldn't move, if he was being held in place by carry powers.
Hmm. Well, I enjoyed Victim No More. You know, I certainly there's some stuff I wish was done. Like I know, for example, that Amy Steele was supposed to have a more prominent part in the movie, but due to the
Yes.
pandemic, that wasn't feasible. I groaned when I heard that, but I mean, what can you do? What can you do? It's not Amy's fault. It's not Bobby's fault. They don't live in the same area. Um,
Well,
you
she's out
know,
in Portland and she's got a whole life out there. I mean, she hasn't acted in a very long time. And then the pandemic, and it's like when she agreed to do it, like things were kind of trailing off and then things got bad again, and I understand it. And, Kathy stepped in and we kind of, rewrote it as Meg Jarvis instead of Meg Higgins. Kind of married her off to Tommy, I guess. But and again, having Kathy on screen, I mean,
mhm.
like I grew up on her movies, so it was like I nerded out so bad when I first met her. And again, Amy would have been great, but like it's completely understandable, and she still made her little contribution to the film. Um, but honestly, I think that's why we went with the Baghead too, because it was supposed to be like a rematch kind of thing.
Speaking of
But
which, you watched the movie, right?
Victim No More.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it once or
Okay.
twice.
Okay. What do you think? I like, they have the opening shot with the hotel, and I don't get it. What's with this guy with the gray hair and the glasses and the shorts walking into shot like that? Can you believe that?
Yeah, well,
Obvious
I
racism
mean,
there.
I think he was like, honestly, they weren't really too good about keeping things off the internet when we were shooting stuff, and I think he was just some weirdo fan who followed them around and tried to get his get his work his way into the production. Um, it happened again when we were shooting in Blairstown. We shot a little bit in Blairstown, um, where they shot the original film. We shot in a park there, and there was this big burly guy who kind of wandered into one of the shots, and he was just kind of strolling there with one of the girls, and I don't know what the hell that asshole was doing there neither. Um, that was me, by the way. I'm just joking, but you know, um, I got my little
For
unmasked
anybody
cameo
that's
in the movie.
listening, we're talking about Bobby Heckman wandering, exiting the hotel, walking out of there with his great. By the way, I gotta bring this up. This is like the worm with Dina. This is my worm. I'm 50 years old. Friggin' Bobby Heckman's got that gray hair, and he's like 5 or 6 years younger than me. What the fuck?
Well, he wears his crown on a troubled brow. That Heckman. I mean, honestly, like when people talk about the movie and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe like you really like." They always talk about like how much endurance I showed in the heat and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, by and far, I probably had the easiest time in life. Like Bobby was going through a lot when we were shooting. Sean, the DP, just had a kidney transplant and was recovering from the kidney transplant while he was shooting the movie. You know, people were going. People were having life dramas and stuff, and I was just a little sweaty. So it's like I can't really
It
talk
could have
about
been
how
all
I
solved had Catherine sang some Apple songs.
no, but I do have a funny story with Kathy. I believe she's a vegetarian, right? I'm not 100% sure, but
Oh,
there was a day when we were shooting and it was well over 100 degrees, and Kathy wanted to buy the crew and Cass lunch. And like Bobby's like, you're crazy, you're crazy. She insisted. And she brought my wife along with her. So like they went to a pizza place to go get some food. And my wife's a vegetarian too. So there were two vegetarians like sitting at a pizza place and they're like, oh, they're gonna want some meat. And they bought this fucking pizza that had every kind of meat you could imagine on it. You know, it was pepperoni, sausage, meatballs, fucking bacon, ground beef, pulled pork, like everything you could imagine. Like, you know, it was like dinosaur meat on this fucking thing, you know? And by the time I like waddled in there in my rubber suit, that's all that was left was this meaty pizza. And let me tell you something, like on a hundred plus degree day in a rubber suit, you do not want to be sweating pepperoni into a mask. Because I
Why
put that
not?
mask on and all I smelled was like Italian meats filling it up, you know, and it was just and this
Oh,
thing was
come
like
on, your
we all
wife
ate
would
it
have
and we're
loved
all
that.
like the whole second
Remember,
half of the day we're all like burping up like you know?
remember, marriage, it says through sickness and in health.
Yes.
So that means your wife has to put up with the pepperoni smell.
Well, but that's the thing. I was like, she thought she was doing something very nice for me. You know, like let's get a nice meaty slice of pizza for my man who's sweating away in a rubber suit. But you know, it's just you know, she became a vegetarian. I don't think she even think she was 10 years old. She was 9 years old. You know, it's a very long time ago. So I don't think she's ever experienced the meat sweats. You know, I don't think that she understands what that's all about. But it's not something you want to do, especially with that whole thing I was describing earlier with the 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 Jason gravy, you know, for lack of a better way of putting it. Although here's another fun story: the day we shot with Jill Whitlow, who was an amazing human being, by the
Yeah.
way, she was awesome. We shot in an office building, and it's actually a town I grew up in. I haven't lived there in quite some time. It's a town called Deer Park out here on Long Island, and we shot in an office building there. And you know, I was trying to earn that producer credit that Bobby bestowed upon me. So the days that I wasn't Jason, I would at least come and either do sound work or be a grip or something, or just be a PA on set, just another body so that he didn't have to pay somebody, you know? So that day I was pretty much stationed outside, you know, and just humping equipment and doing like food runs and stuff like that. And they sent me to a pizza place. So it was just in a just like a shopping center over. Like we were in an office building. There was maybe 2 blocks down, and there was like a little strip mall, and there was a pizza place in there. And that pizza place turned out to be the pizza place from the movie Terrifier. You know, it's the one that like you know in the beginning where Art kills the two pizza men, and I had no fucking clue. And then yesterday I was talking about it. I was actually at Sean's house, the cinematographer, and because I'd never seen Terrifier before, I watched it on Halloween. Great fucking movie. Like I really want to see the sequel now.
I've
But
had a
he's
couple
like, oh yeah,
pictures from that on.
they shot that in Deer Park, and it turns out that that was the same pizza place. And I that was like right by my house where I grew up. So that was the place I got on a bike and went to go get a slice of pizza when I was a kid. You know, and I didn't make the correlation until I went back and watched it. Then I recognized it. You know, but yeah, I had no idea because they shot that thing in like Staten Island or something. That's a good 45 minutes to an hour from here. I guess they just knew somebody who owned the pizza place, so they shot it there.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
so yeah, we ate Art the Clown pizza that day and didn't realize it.
Well, talk about the premiere.
That was a good time. It really was. Because we had while we were premiering the movie, uh, the documentary about like Warlock Films and Chris Seaver was premiering that day too. And Chris and Zach and all those guys are all either friends or friends. They became my friends by the end of the weekend. We spent the whole weekend hanging out with them. So it was like we had a whole little kind of squad because we premiered Victim No More and then their movie right behind us. So it's like we all went there, and Kimberly Beck was with us, and you know, really, really good response. And the next day we're there, and I was able to have the mask out, and people wanted pictures of me in the mask, and were asking me for my autograph, and it was just such a cool experience. And the response to the movie has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, so far, like even the internet trolls have kind of laid off of us, which is kind of cool. Like maybe one or two dicky remarks on like YouTube, and that's about it.
I only make fun of the director. That's it. That's it.
But that whole weekend was kind of great. I mean, when we did the Gooligans, I used to go to cons with them all the time, and it's been a good 10 years. And just getting to kind of immerse myself in the horror community and get to know people and make like it's just such an overwhelmingly positive kind of group. I mean, um, we had done some work with like me and my wife, because we do the props and the costumes with cosplayers and stuff like that, and gotten to know some really wonderful people in that world and like the science fiction kind of anime world. But there's a lot of like toxicity, in that fandom, a lot of like, like, I don't know, like the fact that they have to hang signs saying like don't grope the cosplayers, I mean, and you don't really get that in the horror con, and you don't get people who like if you don't know something, they don't like make you feel stupid. It's like if somebody says, "Oh, have you seen this movie?" and they say, "No, I haven't seen that movie," they get excited because they want to be the one to like, like kind of tell you like, "Oh, go see this movie or check this out," or um, and it's an enthusiasm that's missing, I think, in a lot of this world we're living in. It really is. So it's just like being able to have that experience to go stay in a hotel and and you know get stuck in a like be on like elevator rides with Tim Capello and shit like that. He's all done up with his chains and his he's got his muscles all oiled up and shit. I mean, I forgot how surreal it could be. And then also getting to meet Kimberly Beck and getting to know her and some of the other cool experiences. It was a really nice reintroduction to that world. I've been kind of that was 2 months ago. I'm still riding on away from it, so it was kind of great. It really was.
I just did a couple of cons in October in Toronto, they're a lot of fun to do, and you know, yeah, no, I got introduced to that back in 2017. I actually assisted one of my guests who invited me to one of the horror film cons, so I that was my introductory, and they're pretty surreal. Who all have you met at the cons?
At just the various ones over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Gooligans, when I did the Gooligans, we had a friendship with Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, and I had gotten to meet him through them just after the first season. So, and he'd love us. He'd wear our t-shirts and shit like that, even after he got huge. The problem is that he got too big that he couldn't like come and hang out afterwards. But I had met him. I had met Steve Johnson, um, which was awesome. He was really really cool. We got to like hang out with him one night. The people that I kind of met but didn't really hang out with, like met Sid Haig a bunch of times, and he was great. He does not disappoint. I met George Romero before he passed. Ken Faree. Um, you know, so far I've been kind of lucky, with the exception of one person who I really really admire, kind of like was like, yeah, whatever, man. Like that did happen once. I'm not gonna name names.
Who?
You really, I mean, I was informed later that I probably had the wrong set of genitalia for this person to be excited to meet me. Like he really only likes the girls.
Who?
But I don't want to name it.
No, 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 no. Name names.
Uh, well, let's just say
I mean, they're there to meet the fans, male or female or not. If somebody's paying to meet you, you don't.
Well, that's the thing. Is I didn't pay to meet him. I was friendly with somebody he was talking to, and he came over and said hi to that person. So it's like the guy came over. Like I was talking to, like I become friendly with Edwin Neal from Texas Chainsaw, and I was hanging out with him, and the guy came over and said hello, and I was like, oh, I'm a big fan. He's like, ah, yeah, whatever, man. Like it was one of those things where I went to like shake his hand, and he gave me the fist bump instead. Gave me the fist bump, like that kind of deal. And again, he wasn't a dick to me. He just, you could tell like I was like not going to press him for conversation. And that's the worst I ever got. I had met Bruce Campbell at a book signing, and he kind of like took the piss out of me a little bit, and I fucking loved it because that's really. I would have been disappointed if he didn't break my balls a little. Like you gotta like know what people are about, I
Hmm.
think, but I had met Doug Jones and got to talk to him quite a bit, and he was great. Um, and I wouldn't like he's very good with his fans. And when I played Lurch, I sent him a DM when I was doing the Adams Family, and he responded and gave me some good insights and that stuff that I used when I played Jason as well. I used a lot of the same advice, and he was really really great. Didn't have to do it, and he did it. Um, I'm trying to think. When I was young, this is before. I think this was even before I started working in movies. I went to a sci-fi convention or a comic book convention in Manhattan, and it pretty much got snowed out. And like it was there, but like the weather was bad and there wasn't a lot of people there. And I got to meet and chat with Glenn Shaddix, who's the actor who played Otho in Beetlejuice, and was in Tim Burton's stable for years. He was the mayor in Nightmare Before Christmas. He was a Tim Burton regular for a while, and I actually got to chat with him quite a bit and talk to him about the different movies he's done and stuff like that. And at the time, I was going to be doing like a short play where I played a chimpanzee, and it was right after he'd done. He was in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, and he was like showing me some of the stuff they taught him about how to like hold items like you're an ape with your hands and stuff. And he was really a really great person to like meet and talk to. And Tyler Maine I met at a con, and he was great. Really spent a lot of time again just talking about stunts and fighting and playing monsters and being someone who has to kill people all the time. Like because he was awesome though. Trying to think who else. Bill Mosley. I
I
got to
just
chat with
met
him
Bill
a bit.
Mosley.
He was a really nice guy. I really liked him a lot.
You want me to tell you my Bill Mosley story?
Fire away.
Okay, I just met him at Frightmare in the Falls, and I didn't recognize him when I saw him because he's he doesn't look anything like these characters. But I saw him and I said to him, I said, "Holy cow, you could have walked right past me. I wouldn't recognize you." But it was getting towards the end of the Friday night. It was Friday and Saturday night for the con. And I had VIP, so I was going to be there the next day. But he was stationed next to Michael Berryman. And I said to Bill Mosley, I said, "How beautiful is Sherry Moon Zombie in person in Devil's Rejects?" And he goes, "That's a Michael Berryman question." So I turned to Michael Berryman and I asked him the same question. And he says, "Very, very beautiful." And I said, "Prettier than Bill Mosley here?" He goes, "Anything's prettier than that thing." And Bill Mosley's just standing there with his jaw dropped. He goes, "Hey, I thought we were friends."
Well, me and my wife had met Ken Faree at Spooky Empire in Orlando,
Mm-hmm.
and I had met him prior, gotten his autograph at a different con, and we were working the Gouligan's table, so we didn't really get around to meet too many of the celebrities at that one, which kind
Mm-hmm.
of sucks too, because like Robert Englund was there and stuff, and I would have liked to have at least gotten an autograph from him, and I just didn't have time. But at one point, we just stepped outside for some air, and my wife was dressed like an evil mermaid, like a siren, and she had like some like reptilian like kind of contact lenses in. And he stepped outside to smoke a cigarette and like looked at the contacts like, man, I can't look in your eyes. He was just like getting freaked out and stuff. And we ended up bullshitting with him a little bit because I had met him, I had gotten his autograph, but I hadn't really chatted with him too much. So
Yeah.
he was he was kind of a cool person. Tom Atkins stopped by the Gouligan's table at a con. Like he was just it was early. We were just setting up, and he was just kind of walking around checking everything out. And I almost didn't recognize him at first, to my shame. And then all of a sudden, like he's like, "Hi, what do you guys have?" "Oh, it's like a TV show and stuff." And I'm like, are you here with a table?" And then I'm like, "Wait, so no, what? No, Tom Atkins. You're Tom Atkins." And he laughed and kind of walked away. So, I didn't really get to chat with him. Like, I had a split moment where I didn't realize who he was. And, I hate to say it, in the years that followed, I became sort of like a mega fan of his. So, I mean, I think if I ever got a chance to meet him again, I would completely dork out on him. Um, I also met some other cool. Like I used to work at the Apple Store in Manhattan. I met a lot of cool people there too. Like I met like Seth Green came in, and I got to like help him, and I gave Tom Selleck at Apple, like a computer lesson, and Diane Weist. She came in as well. I've never heard her name said out loud. I've only read it. So, but she was awesome. She was really sweet. And then I'm from Long Island, so everybody on Long Island's got like a Mick Foley story and a Dee Snider story. They're everywhere, you know.
Well, you know what? Sometime either later this month or in December, I would like to have your wife come on here and talk about her archery lessons.
Well, hold on a second. Hey, Lindsay. Linz, you want to be on a podcast, babe? Linz. Just pretend she don't hear me right now. Linz. You want to be on a podcast? No, sorry.
I'm not feeling so hot. Otherwise, I would.
Oh,
No, not now.
I know. I was just breaking her chops, but
Tell her to say hello to me. Tell her come on, pop in here and say hello. Tell her I'm a producer, the victim no more.
she's actually had a really hard day at work. But I'll I'm sure she would like to come on the podcast at a later date and talk about her contributions and stuff.
Well, I remember her with that bow and arrow. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but she designed a lot of the costumes in it as well, and
Yeah.
she was instrumental in us getting that decrepit summer camp. That set, that amazing. So we didn't have to do anything. That place just exists. You know, we just rolled in there and shot. Like we didn't even move a leaf. You know,
There you go.
We wouldn't have gotten that location without her. So I mean, I'm sure she'd have some fun stories to tell as well. You know, and also having to deal with like when I came out of that costume, I smelled like a foot. You know, and she'd have to get in the car and drive sometimes like an hour with me. You know.
Did she make you get in the trunk?
No, but I think she wanted to. But it was funny because I would completely strip, like butt naked. I would strip in a parking lot. Everything would go into a garbage bag, and then I'd have dry clothes handy, you know. But
I washed them too.
Well, you know what? It's wonderful having you come on here today, you know, and like I said, there's got to be a follow-up where Jason decides to use worms over a machete, you know.
yes,
And
he's gonna have the machete in one hand and a handful of worms in the other, and
yeah,
he's gonna kind of,
and hold them up to Dina's face.
Gonna get me in trouble.
She's gonna so regret Bobby Heckman telling me about this. I'll tell you that.
You're gonna get me in trouble. She's gonna hear this, and I'm gonna get yelled at. I'm telling you straight up. You know.
Oh well, better you than me.
Well, it was great talking to you. And
you know, it was wonderful. You know, it was wonderful having you on. And when this is ready, I'll send you a link to it. You know, bear with me on my laptop situation. I'm hoping this all worked out. I think it did. But yeah, it was great. And I wasn't on set for it. Didn't need to be. I just heard of all the details, you know. So yeah. But nonetheless, I appreciated having you come on today, and I hope your wife will come on here either later this month or next month and hear her contribution and hear about how she wants to shoot more arrows at you.
Well, I think she certainly does now, you know, because I put her on the spot. But yeah, no, it was great chatting with you, and you know, I mean, let's do this again soon. You know, maybe we'll get another one of these things going. You know.
Absolutely, I'll be welcome to that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, I will bid you a good day. I got an all-night shift tonight at the hospital. You know, working in the ER.
Well, I have a very early start for work because I live, without getting too much into geography, I live in the center of Long Island, and the far east end is like the Hamptons, where all the rich people have their summer homes. And so I work in the Hamptons. It's about an hour drive, but it's an early start too. So I get up about 4 a.m, you know, to get out there. So it's, you know, daylight savings was nice because we got an extra hour, but now it's throwing off the schedule, you know, so now I got to figure out my sleeping again. But yeah, so I'm with you there.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for coming on here today and chatting about Victim No More. And yeah, we got to do this again sometime, you know?
All right, sounds good, man.
All right. God bless you. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Likewise, you take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.